Um, well, as you should be aware, is for the most part, I am a leftist. I am as left as they come. Um, but like, I was kind of given a challenge, or like, I give myself a challenge because of like me perceiving me being challenged online. Um, so you have this thing in political commentary, as you probably already know. You might have seen in your comment section, if you've ever read your comment section, you probably know about it, where there's a saying that goes around that there is no centrist in politics. And obviously, when they talk about that, they're talking about something very specific. And then it's a combination between that and the fake centrists. And because I'm like an amateur self-taught theorist, and I've always been a lefty, even way before I even got into politics, I think I'm always going to be a person that's going to defend minorities, considering like I've gone through bullying and elitism and snobbiness in school. So I'm always being a victim of it. I'm always going to fight against it. Um, but like I've been given the challenge of, if there's no true centrism, if these aren't real, if those people aren't real centrists, then I'm going to be a real centrist. I'm going to do actual centrist theory and theorize how to be a centrist. And what I basically realize what that involves is, remember, I'm a center leftist, progressive, left winger liberal first, but my philosophy is preparing me to entertain centrist theory. And the main goal of a centrist is you entertain like right wing stances, or like far right wing stances or far left wing stances. You steel man them and you try to like make them less extreme. So you de-radicalize the extreme elements of these things. For instance, immigration. Now, I understand that immigration is a necessity while we're waiting for these other countries to develop and catch up with more developed countries. I do believe we have to take in some immigrants to actually, when they're fleeing these countries. So I understand immigration is a necessity, but what I've done is I basically went right then. If I'm gonna entertain like immigration being a problem, realizing it is actually a problem, but actually get to the truth behind it. And what my ultimate goal is that I'm trying to be like, this is what the right wing should be talking about. This is what the right wing stances should be. And basically, that's what I'm doing as a centrist. And I'm trying to de radicalize the far right, or the right wing, which is going in a far right direction. And I'm trying to bring them back to the center. And originally, I didn't really know how to do it for the left, because I don't really like, I followed a lot of like bad faith actors, grifters online. And I know all about them. I know all about their talk, about their stances and stuff like that. But I don't really follow any like far left people. I don't even know who they are. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the far left people are like random civilians that aren't really relevant politically, because I don't know ultimately who they are. I don't know their stances are. So I don't. So and because of like I have got a left wing bias, it's hard for me to entertain de-radicalizing the far left. But what I eventually realized is, by de-radicalizing the far right, by entertaining right-wing stances and de-radicalizing them, I'm going to try to bring them to the center right, and it's going to enable those people then to be able to appeal to people on the far left. And as a result of me de-radicalizing the far right, I'm going to de-radicalize them so they can actually communicate with the people that they label woke, so they can actually become reasonable, come centre right wing, for them to be able to talk to um, for them to talk to those far left leaning people. And when it comes to persuading the opposite side, there's a thing that I created a while ago, and for some reason I'm remembering now. It was to do with like a sandpiper video, and was it a sandpiper? Was it? the left-leaning political commentator that shall not be named because like people turned against him and stuff like that, so he's got like a bad reputation. So I'm not gonna. It might be him actually, or it might be. I can't remember which one, but anyway, I created this philosophy about like path to agreement to the middle ground, and what it eventually became is you got to bring people to the center left and the center right for them to be able to have, for them to be able to be reasonable, for them to talk to each other in order to reach across the aisle. And there's a little bit of political spectrum theory that I've basically created. And the way it goes is you got the far left point and you got the far right point. And the reason why the far left isn't going to appeal to the far right and the far right isn't going to appeal to the far left is because the distance you need to travel is greater. And the further distance you go from one side of the spectrum to the other side of the spectrum, the more resistance there's going to be. And there's going to be like the gravitational force that pushes you away is going to become like denser, and it's going to be harder for you to actually move to end up reaching the far left point or the far right point. So in order to neutralize or to lessen that density of that gravitational resistance, you've got to bring the far left to the center left and bring the far right to the center right, and then there's only like a 25% distance they need to travel to get to the center in order to, so when both of them come to the center left and the center right, because they've basically shortened the distance, that enables them to travel back and forth with much more ease because the gravitational pull is far less, because the distance you have to travel is far less. And the reason why I'm getting this like 25% from is the political spectrum is basically like 4 parts. So the first part, so like if you cut 100% by 50 and then cut the 50 by 50, you get by half, you get 25%. So each segment of the political spectrum is worth 25% percentage points. So from so the quarter percentages that you have is from left or far left to center left is 25%. From center left to center is 25%. And then from center to center right is 25%. And then from center right to far right, there's another 25%. So it's 20, so that then equals 100% in total. So when you've got 100% distance to travel to get to the opposite end point, because you're traveling much further, the resistance is going to be greater, and you're not going to be able to travel that distance in order to appeal to the other side. So you have to basically come to the center left and the center right. And when both sides, or like, if you want a far left-wing person and a far right-wing person to appeal to each other, they both got to come to the center left and the center right. And then that's when you create balance in the center. And it's kind of hard to explain that point. So it's like, if you're center left and center right, and because you're both able to reach each other, you end up meeting each other in the middle and meeting each other in the center, creating a balance point. So that's how I'm going to de-radicalize the far right and the far left. Because I'm going to de-radicalize the right-wing positions, like with immigration, explaining how, why immigration is actually happening, and the true cause of immigration is actually corruption in these countries. So when you have a political leaning that enables that corruption, that political leaning is not going to solve immigration. It's actually going to make immigration worse. It's like, for instance, if like Britain or America turned into a full theocracy, nobody wants to, I don't think anybody really wants to live in a theocratic dictatorship. So if Britain, for example, turned into a theocratic dictatorship, then there's going to be an immigrant crisis of migrants wanting to move from the UK. Like with me having mental health issues and me not being able to work and being on benefits, what was I saying? If in the UK, for instance, we lose the NHS, then I can't live in the UK anymore. If the UK turns into a full-blown theocracy and the religious people starts controlling like my porn habits and my sex life and stuff like that, I'm going to want to be migrating from this country that's become corrupt. So corruption isn't going to solve corruption, and corruption is the thing. Well, corruption, neglect, and oppression is the thing that keeps on creating these migrant crises. And so I want to, so by me taking on the immigration, problem and taking it seriously, I can de-radicalize the far right and bring them to the centre right, and then that's going to enable them to appeal to the far left in order to bring the far left to the centre left. What else can I explain? So there's a problem that people always point out with the political spectrum, that it's too simple. So I've basically fixed that flaw by making it more complex, by applying the political spectrum in the form of realms. So you have like different realms of how you apply the political spectrum. So the first is your overall political leaning with your policies and your values. So overall, for instance, on most policy or every policy, I'm like a centre leftist. So the first realm is the normal political leaning realm, or where you stand with policies. The second realm is for individual policies. So like for each individual policy, each person could change their stances. There's what are the other ones? There's economic theory, which economic theory you agree with. So for instance, and then this economic theory is like a completely different political spectrum. And so for instance, if you're far left on the economic political spectrum, then you'd be for socialism or for communism. If you're centre left, you'd be for social democracy. And by the way, I think I got this inspiration from an online post in some like forum. So what was I talking about? Economic theory. If you're a centrist, it's just like I think you roughly would be like for 50% capitalism and 50% socialism. So ultimately like 50-50 social democracy. And then if you're like centre right, you'd be for mainly capitalism and then a little bit of socialism. And then if you're far right, then it's just like you're against socialism or communism or whatever. You're just completely against them. So I've done the overall, done the policy realm, done the economic theory realm. There's two that I'm having trouble with the terminology. I'm not sure what to name them quite yet. Because you've got like social politics. Like a lot of people think they're right wing because they like people like Ben Shapiro. And it's just like, just because you like Ben Shapiro because you think he's funny for owning the libs, that doesn't make you a conservative and make you right leaning. So therefore, on a personal level, It's either personal or it's either social level, where you determine your political leaning not by having like liberal or conservative values, but by what people you like the personality of online. Um, and then there's kind of like, I think that's social, like what kind of like people you interact socially online with, and then personal then depends on a person, on whether you're a person that defends minorities, or you're basically like what I call a-hole politics, and you know what a-hole stands for. So what's that? So you got, run through again, overall policy realm, political spectrum realm, per policy political spectrum realm, economic realm of the political spectrum, then you got social realm, and then you've got social realm with like what social groups you are part of online, or whatever. And then the fifth one then is personality, where you either want to defend minorities and you have like compassion towards the minorities, or you're a bit of like an a-hole or a jerk, and you're like, you think it's funny when people troll like liberal people online. So I think those are the five realms of the political spectrum, and this kind of fixes the simplicity of the political spectrum, and it makes the political spectrum more complicated. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty sure there was another one or two, but I'm trying to do this without looking it up because I was on a roll explaining things, and usually I read from like a script that I've written. Um, but yeah.